In a city full of people, differences are immediately noticeable, not just in money or wealth, but in opportunities, chances, and self-confidence. Some people feel secure, see their future as open, and can pursue their dreams. Others constantly struggle just to get by. Much of these differences can be traced back to income inequality. But what exactly does income inequality mean, and what is actually measured? The term covers more than it seems at first glance. In economics, many things can be unevenly distributed, for example, money, wealth, or opportunities. These things are connected, but are not the same and have different causes. For example, the distribution of income differs from the distribution of wealth. So what does that mean exactly? Income is the money people receive regularly, for example, from work, interest, or dividends. It comes repeatedly, for instance, every month. Wealth, on the other hand, is what someone owns in total: houses, savings, or other valuable assets. Both are closely related, but they should not be confused. Even for income, there are different forms that need to be distinguished. First, there is wages, the money earned from work. If you take different working hours into account, you get the distribution of labor income. Then there is household income, which is the total money all members of a household earn. This is the income available to a family or shared household. Income does not only come from work. Many people also earn money from capital, such as interest, dividends, or rental income. When all these sources are considered together, it is called the market income of a household. Finally, the state intervenes through taxes and social benefits. It collects money through taxes and redistributes it. What remains after this redistribution is called net income. To understand the development and extent of inequality, it first needs to be measured. And to measure it, we need data, as much and as accurate as possible. Usually, economists use microdata, collections of information about individuals or households. Every country has its own system for collecting data. In the USA, there's the Panel Study of Income Dynamics, or PSID. In the UK, it's the British Household Panel Survey, the BHPS. In Switzerland, the Swiss Household Panel, or SHP, collects the data. And in Germany, there's the Socioeconomic Panel, the SOEP. Even though the names are different, they all share the same goal: to give a realistic picture of people's lives and income. There is an important challenge. Many people do not live alone, but in households. If we assigned household income only to the earners, we would misrepresent financial situations. People without their own income, like children, still benefit from the household income. This is why equivalence scales are used. They help account for the needs of individual household members. According to the OECD scale, the person with the highest income counts as 1. Other people over 14 years count as 0.5. Children under 14 count as 0.3. So if this household earns $4,600 and the equivalence scale is 2.3, that works out to an equivalent income of around $2,000. From these factors, we get the equivalent household income, which shows how much income a single adult would need to reach the same living standard as a household. This allows fair comparisons between households. But be careful, when comparing inequality between countries, the same databases and equivalence scale must be used. Once the data is collected, the question is, how do we measure inequality? There are different indicators, but every measure should meet 4 basic principles. First, scale invariance. Multiplying all incomes by a constant should not change the inequality measure. Second, population invariance. Duplicating the same population should not change inequality. Third, anonymity or symmetry. It does not matter who has which income. Switching incomes between people should not change the measure. And finally, transfer principle. If a rich person gives a small part of their income to a poorer person without changing their relative positions, inequality should decrease. These principles ensure that an inequality measure is fair, understandable, usable, and comparable. The most well-known measure is the Gini coefficient, mainly used to measure income inequality, but it can also be applied to wealth or other distributions. The Gini coefficient ranges from 0 to 1. 0 means perfect equality, everyone has the same. 1 means maximum inequality, one person has everything, everyone else has nothing. Sometimes it is expressed in percent as the Gini index. Higher values indicate greater inequality. Another tool is the Lorenz curve, which shows cumulative income graphically. It is closely linked to the Gini coefficient. If income were perfectly equal, the Lorenz curve would lie on the diagonal, the line of equality. For example, 10% of the population would have 10% of total income, 20% would have 20%, and so on. If one person earned all income, the Lorenz curve would hug the bottom axis, and the Gini coefficient would approach 1. In reality, both extremes are rare. Usually there is always some inequality. For example, the bottom 60% of the population may own only about 30% of total income. The Lorenz curve is a very helpful tool for comparing income inequalities at a glance. For example, one can compare the income distributions of two different states to analyze which one is more equal, or examine two different points in time within the same state to see whether inequality has increased or decreased. When comparing two Lorenz curves, the one that lies closer to the line of equality represents a more equal income distribution than the one that bows further downward. The Gini coefficient measures how far the Lorenz curve deviates from the line of perfect equality. It looks at the area between the Lorenz curve and the equality line, called area A, and compares it to the total area under the equality line, which is A plus B. In formula form, the Gini coefficient is calculated as A divided by A plus B. However, the Gini coefficient has some limitations. Different income distributions can have the same Gini value, meaning they show the same overall inequality, but the income might be concentrated differently. Also, if Lorenz curves cross, it can be unclear which distribution is actually more unequal. Another method divides income data into 100 equal parts, each representing 1% of the population. These are called percentiles. If higher percentiles earn much more than lower ones, inequality exists. Percentiles can be analyzed in two ways. First, there's the growth incidence curve. This curve compares income growth rates across different percentiles of the population. By connecting the growth points, you form a curve that shows which parts of the population gained more income. For example, if the top percentiles grow quickly while the bottom percentiles stagnate, overall inequality increases. One advantage of the growth incidence curve is that it takes the middle class into account. Second, we have direct percentile comparison. This method compares specific percentiles of the population. For example, the 90-10 ratio looks at the top 10% versus the bottom 10%, while the 90-50 ratio compares the top 10% to the middle class. However, there are some limitations. Focusing only on the extremes can miss important changes in the middle class. Additionally, it may violate the transfer principle if income is redistributed within the middle class. Income inequality describes how unevenly income is distributed in a society. It is not just numbers. Behind these indicators are real people, real families, experiencing very different realities. These measures show who gets how much of the total income, allow comparisons over time and between countries, and help us understand the mechanisms that increase or reduce inequality. Seeing this, we might ask ourselves, what policies or actions could help create a fairer distribution? If you found this video interesting, check out the channel for more exciting videos about economic topics and stay updated. Next, Econary. Think wisely, evolve quickly, understand profoundly.